Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask Me Anything with me, paranormal romance author Felicity Heaton. Let's jump right in with the questions. Kathleen asked, was there any book which you found more difficult to finish? What do you do when characters change from what you originally planned? That's a great question, and the answer to both of them lie in my Vampire's Realm series. To date, Winter's Kiss has been the hardest book for me to finish, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know whether it was just that I didn't want to leave Winter and Nika behind, or whether something about the book just wasn't sitting quite right with me. In the end, I think it probably took me so long to finish that book that I decided to set it aside for a while and work on something else that the muse was more interested in, until I came up with a solution and could eventually finish the book. I don't often run into these kind of problems. To be fair, I mean, normally I outline my books so thoroughly that I don't have a problem finishing them. I will slow down towards the end of a book, but I think that's kind of natural for me. I don't want to leave worlds behind. I don't really like finishing stories. I like to kind of keep them going. I want to keep that romance alive and keep writing about those characters that I get so invested in. So it's really hard for me to finish books sometimes, but never quite as hard as Winter's Kiss. I mean, that one really kicked me in the butt. As for the other question, again, Vampire's Realm. The one character that really went off plan for me was Venturi. Venturi was meant to be an antagonist. He was meant to come into the relationship between Prophecy and Valentine and really mess things up for them, really kind of prove to be a challenge and give them a hurdle that they needed to overcome. But I kind of grew to love Venturi, and I kind of liked the dynamic that was happening, and I didn't want to move away from that. Venturi just decided that he really wanted to be a third wheel in this relationship, and he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He didn't want to turn against Prophecy or ruin anything she had. He just he reshaped himself into a completely different character, really. I mean, he just ran with it, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. I mean, it's rare for my characters to go off plan, but if they do, I just tend to go with the flow. I mean, I try and plan my books as thoroughly as I can because I prefer to write from a really clear outline. I find that it helps me get the book out there and kind of write it at a pace I like to write at. And I do like to include twists in my books, and this is always easier to kind of manage if I have that outline there to work from. But yeah, so if a character goes off plan, I don't tend to fight them. I just kind of explore where they're going with them, and yeah, sometimes I rein them back a bit if they get ideas and start changing major things in the story, but no, for the most part I just let them do as they please. I mean, it's their story, so I don't really want to stop them from doing what they feel is right. I really hope that answers your question. Okay, so my next question comes from Soraya, who asked, what are your favourite characters, both male and female, in the Eternal Mate series? Well, Soraya, I have a lot of characters in that series, and it's always really hard for me to choose a favourite from among them, but I'm going to have to lean towards Vale, and it's actually my favourite pairing in the series is Vale and Rosalind, because I really like the disparity between them. I like kind of like how they're two really polar personalities. I mean, Vale is really dark and he's gritty and he's dangerous, and he's got like a really almost evil side to his personality, being a tainted elf, and he's embraced that side of himself for so long that it's really hard for him to kind of overcome it. And I think that comes across in most of the encounters people have with him. I mean, he's extremely, not territorial or protective, but he's very quick to anger. I mean, he takes no from anyone, you know? On the other hand, Rosalind tends to be this bright, bubbly, fun kind of character. She's a witch who she'll take no mess from anyone, but at the same time she'll probably err towards kind of hexing them or something as payment for any slight that she felt has been made towards her. But when they get together, it's just fantastic to write them, because Vale is this doting husband, I suppose now, and Rosalind really loves to push his boundaries and kind of just poke until he explodes. I mean, she doesn't mean to do it all the time, but sometimes she just kind of like, she pokes the bear. She pokes the bear and she kind of takes pleasure in the way he will, rather than channeling any anger he feels towards her, he'll channel it towards somebody else. So she likes to set other people up for often a very nasty fall with Vale, and I have to admit that I kind of enjoy writing that. I enjoy writing them kind of, the push and pull between them. It's just fantastic, and it's kind of great for me as well to see how their relationship is progressing in the series. I love to see kind of how they're growing and how Vale is kind of coming into his own again. I mean, he's slowly overcoming everything that happened to him that led up to his romance, which was Tempted by a Rogue Prince, which is book 3 in the series. And since then, we've kind of caught up with them in various books at various stages of their relationship, and it's kind of fantastic just to kind of see the growth that he's making, and how Rosalind is kind of coming to kind of help him, and also accept that her husband has a serious problem with her kind. He's had some very bad experiences with witches, and therefore he kind of, he can get a little antsy around her. But it's kind of fantastic to kind of see how they're growing, and that's why they're my favourite couple in the Eternal Maid series. Okay, this next question comes from Claire, who asked me, how do you decide which characters get a book of their own? I just read books 16, 17 and 18 of Eternal Mates plus Keras, and the amount of cameo characters I want to know more about is endless. Sometimes it's the case where a series has set books for each character. This is the case for the Guardians of Hades series, which was always originally going to be 7 books for the 7 Sons of Hades, but during the planning stages it progressed into being 9 books in total, adding a book for Calindria, their sister, and for Hades, and his book will cap off the series, but there will be a kind of prequel novella for Hades and Persephone, so we know how they got together. Series like the Eternal Mate series are very much different. They grow organically. I have very little control over what's happening in the character-wise in the Eternal Mate series. They're just running away with me. Every time I write a book in that series, I tend to gain at least another 1 or 2 characters who want their own book. And all they have to really do is prove to me that they're worthy of the book of their own, and I will find a place in the series for them. I have plenty of kind of storylines emerging in this series that they can kind of find a place where they belong, and yeah, I'm fine with characters just kind of popping up here and there as they please. I don't mind adding new characters. I enjoy building this world that's really filled with characters, and it feels really natural, and I love adding in all the little cameos and things like that. But I have realised now that at book 18 in the series that I really needed to kind of start including at the end of the book, or somewhere in each book, a list of the characters and which book is theirs, because the number of times I get asked things like, will Blue get a book? And I'm like, yeah, it's like book 9, it's already written, it's out there, it's, you go read it. So I've kind of realised now that I need to have a list somewhere of the characters that are having cameos in these books, because some of them already have their books written and they're already out there, and obviously I need to find a better way for you guys to be able to find that information. But no, yeah, I don't turn away characters. I embrace them. They're all more than welcome to pop into my books. That's perfectly fine with me, and yeah, I'll just keep on jotting notes down for them and seeing where they fit into any series that I'm writing. So yeah. Alright, this next question comes from Kathleen, who asked, how difficult was it to make the decision to take up full-time writing and step away from your previous role? That's actually a really good question, and I will say right now that it wasn't that difficult for me to step away from my previous role as a web developer and into a full-time role as a writer. I did work really hard to crunch my numbers and figure out if I could afford to do this, and once I knew that I could, I was really excited about it. I mean, you have to understand that I started writing as an indie author, not just a published author, but as a self-published author back in 2004. Now, back then we were told pretty much every year was going to be the year that ebooks were going to make it big. Unfortunately, every year it didn't seem that ebooks were making it big. Everything was just sort of plodding along, there was no pickup, nothing was really happening. So there were some dark years, and I kept at it, I kept writing. I kept kind of chasing the dream of being like a full-time indie author. Didn't really think it was ever going to happen. Ironically, at the point where I actually ended up making it happen was at the point where I had reached the end of my tether. I had decided that, right, I am writing a novel and I am writing it to pitch to publishers because I am done with this game. I'm just worn down, I am tired, you know, I am weary. And I ended up kind of working on that, and then while I was working on that and I took my eye off the world, all of a sudden everything started picking up. Now, this was due to the fact that Amazon finally opened up the Kindle kind of publishing platform to authors outside of the USA. Now, as you can tell from my accent, I am not American, I am British. We have a bad tendency to be excluded by Amazon for a while. They tend to open up new things to just US people at first. So it took a couple of years, I think, before they actually opened up their self-publishing arm to non-US authors. And once they did, I gave it a go. I kind of popped my books up that I already had on there. I wrote some new ones, and within about 6 months, I was actually making enough money to cover my bills. Now, this was like a real surprise to me. I just didn't know what was going on. So I sat down and I talked to my husband about this, and I was like, well, look, I'm making enough to cover the bills here, and I feel that if I went full time and I wasn't just writing on a train to and from work and at lunch times and on the weekends, that I could probably kind of make a career out of this. You know, my books are selling, they're getting great reviews, and you know, the dream was finally within my reach, and it was a dream that had always felt impossible, and then all of a sudden it was kind of there. So that was quite frightening, really, you know. And I feel really blessed every day that I get to do this as my full-time job. I mean, sometimes I just still can't believe that. I mean, I've been a full-time writer now for 10 years this year, which is something I didn't actually realise until I was sitting down with my husband with a glass of wine in March 2021, and we were talking about the fact that we'd been stuck in lockdown for a year and he'd been working at home for a year, and it kind of made me think about how long I'd been working from home. And I say working from home, it just sounds like I'm stuffing envelopes. How long I've been working from home, and honestly, it was a shock to realise that it was actually 10 years since I had quit officially left my job at that point. I was working in London in a managerial role in e-commerce for a large brand. I can't obviously name names, but it was a well-paying job, and so leaving it was quite scary, especially since I was only making enough money at the time to cover the bills. But because I was a web developer, then I knew that I could mitigate things by doing some freelancing. Now, people I worked with there were, sometimes they were freelancers, and one of them I knew was my boss, and he did some freelance work on the side. So I knew it was possible to kind of do freelance work and do other work, and strike that nice balance that meant that I would be able to write for, say, 6 months and do web developing stuff for 6 months, and maybe slowly work my way towards being a full-time writer. I didn't honestly believe that I would be able to just jump straight in and that was it, kiss goodbye to web developing forever. I'm very cautious. I don't leap before I look. I kind of figured out all the numbers and crunched everything, and I was like, right, if I just part-time writer, part-time developer, this will work. Now, because I was in a managerial role, I had to give them 3 months notice. It was a long period because I wasn't allowed to work on anything at the time, because they didn't want me to work on stuff that I was then going to leave. So I mostly just sat around twiddling my thumbs. But it did allow me to kind of build my social presence and work on ideas for other books and sort of really get the ball rolling while I was still being paid by them. And finally, by the time that I actually left my job, having served 3 months notice, my books had taken off so well that I didn't even need to freelance. I mean, I've not freelanced a day in my kind of writer career. So it's been fantastic. I mean, I've just been able to get on with writing, and like I said, I feel really blessed that I'm able to do this, because I know it's the dream of so many people, and it's just kind of fantastic that it's like a dream. It's like I wake up every day in a dream. I mean, I love this job, and it's just amazing that I get to do it full time. So yeah, it's kind of like, it wasn't difficult at all once I made the decision, once I crunched the numbers and found the courage and took the leap. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. If you have any questions you'd like me to answer in a future episode of Ask Me Anything, then drop them in the comments below, or head on over to my Facebook fan club group where you can connect with other readers like you and with me.